Okie dokie, folks. Here we are. And I still haven't figured out... I think I just broke my ring light. Give me a hot second. Do I look like shit from working all week? Yeah, but... oh well. I'm not dealing with it. Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, and welcome back to the shit show that is my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up the books that I read in June, very delayed, because that's how I'm functioning lately. I've just pulled up the list and genuinely don't remember half of this, so we're gonna be in for a wild ride. So, first up, we have The Return of the King, which is the third Lord of the Rings book. And this might be a separate video on its own, but I just watched the movies for the first time, and controversial opinion, did not like the last one. Yeah, I have lots of thoughts about it, and also I was like, am I not remembering the book right? What is happening? Why do we have a ghost army? What is going on? But with that being said, the book was incredible, and this is gonna sound weird, but I wasn't expecting to like Frodo as much as I did, and I think one of the things that this book does so well compared to the movies is we really get to spend time with all of the Fellowship and all of those main characters a lot, and there's a lot of characters that get done really dirty in the movies, and we don't really get time to be with or interact with them to get to know them on as much of an intimate level as we do in the book. The ending of this book fucking ruined me. I think as an Arrow Ace person who values friendship so deeply and who wants what Sam and Frodo have, I don't know, am I allowed to spoil the ending? This book came out 70 years ago? Older than that? Oh, it says right there, 1955. Okay, it wasn't too far off with 70, but fuck it, I'm gonna say it. When Sam and Rosie get married and Frodo's move in with me, and he's like, but Rosie and I are getting married and we're supposed to get a place, and Frodo's like, then both move in with me, and Sam's like, all right. Dreams. Literal dreams. Yes, and also that line that Gandalf has, I think it ended up in the movie too, where it was I'm not gonna tell you not to cry because not all tears are an evil. I know the beginning part of that doesn't sound right to me, but the way that this whole series, J.R.R. Tolkien deals with masculinity and war and, there's a reason he's the king of high fantasy. And yeah, I would highly recommend reading them if you haven't. And there is a really amazing version of the audiobooks on Spotify that I would also recommend you check out. Watching the movies made me tempted to reread them because I read them so spread out. I feel like there's a lot of things that I missed, but I think I might have to put that on the docket because I am falling very behind on my TBR. So maybe once I catch up, I'll have some time for a good Lord of the Rings reread. After that, I own half of these books. I'm just too lazy to go up and get them. Maybe I should. I'm back with actual copies of books. The next book I read is the DC Comics Pride edition, which was interesting reading that I'm not a DC fan. It's not that I'm not a DC fan, it's I know more about the Marvel Universe than I do with DC, so reading, I've read the Agen Fraction run of Hawkeye and Loki, Agent of Asgard, and I can understand those more because I know the world, even if I'm not up on all the comics lore. And there was a couple in here where I was like, I don't know what's happening. I feel like I should be. I'd have more feelings about this if I was actually connected to the characters a little bit more. But yeah, it's all queer stories. Part of the reason I wanted to get it was because there is an asexual coming out story that's completely done by an Ace creative team, which is really cool. It did make me a little sad thinking about how hard it is to find Arrow Ace comics. I think kind of the general public opinion and the thing that really hit the hardest for a lot of people, me included, was as much of this is as a collection of celebration. At the end, they have a comic which is written by Kevin Conroy, who played Batman in the animated series, which I am currently in the process of watching. He's a gay actor, and he's writing about kind of his own life and his own experience growing up and coming to terms with his sexuality, dealing with the AIDS crisis, and being blacklisted as an actor because of his sexuality, and how all of that idea of feeling like he had this mask and this other version of himself came into Batman. And it is a really beautiful story, and the way the art and everything is brought together, and like his family and his growth and reflections on what the character means to him and what it means to a lot of people is really beautifully done. There was a little bit of a critique because this line like made me cringe when I read it in the very first comic. I can't remember who it is, but somebody says, "I'm glad you read up on Pride history, Damien, but that was in 1960. Pride's been a party for decades." And like, the state of the world right now, like, that feels particularly insensitive with Kevin Conroy's story being in the same thing, but also the fact that Pride is still a riot in a lot of ways. Pride is always going to be a riot until queer people are fully accepted and we completely radicalize the system and the world that we live in. And I think that's something that's really important to think about. But also it is really amazing that, you know, we have groups like DC Pride and Marvel's Pride like coming together to take this moment in celebration of the diversity of the communities. And also it's really cool because this is all canon, so a lot of the times people don't want to acknowledge the identities, and this is a really cool way of like, I don't want to say forcing it into narrative, but some of the more questionable people who still work in comics, it's like, fuck you, look what we've done with your character. It's more, it doesn't belong to you anymore, like that kind of narrative, which is really cool, really lovely. Next, I read a billion Sandmans. I might just do them all as one big one, honestly. That might be easier. So, let's see. I don't have all of them here because I took some of them back to the library, but how far did I get in? Okay, so I got these two for my birthday, and this is the first and second volume of Sandman. So the first one is this one, which is Preludes and Nocturnes. And then the second one is The Doll's House. And I also read in June Dream Country, Seasons of Mist, and A Game of You, which is the first 5. And I think I'm on 9 now. So I guess I've read more in July than I thought I have. But essentially this follows Dream, who is one of the Endless, which is kind of this group that's like above gods or like has lasted longer than gods. I'm gonna try and remember all of them. So there is Dream, Death, Destiny, Desire, Despair, Delirium, and Destruction. But there's more of a story going on there with Destruction. I feel like I might be missing one. Yeah, and so it's kind of cool because Morpheus, who is also Dream, who is also the Sandman, is an embodiment of like dreams, but also the concept of dreaming. So like this idea of like, you know, longing for something or a better future or things like that is also something that like falls under his realm, which is really cool. This is a series that's done by Neil Gaiman, and they're making it into a TV show, which is why I really wanted to read it. At the beginning of the series, a lot of these are more like standalones. So the first volume deals a lot with Dream was kidnapped and trapped in the human world for a really long time, and then like returning home and kind of building up the lore and everything. And a lot of the issues are more like standalone stories, but it's really cool because they all start to plant the seeds of stories that come later, and then we get to come back to characters and see them in a new perspective or a new light. And it's also like drawing a lot of like hints and Easter eggs for the way that the story is coming together at the end. So while I've always enjoyed, you know, all of it, there's definitely stories that have resonated with me more than others, and I think I'm definitely liking it and getting a lot more involved in it now that I am later in the series. I think I'm on 9, I said, and I think there's 12 total. And, you know, it's really coming together and you're more grounded in the characters and the stories and getting more flushed narratives that are pulling from all of this foundation that the earlier volumes set up, which is really cool. And I'm really excited to see how they bring a lot of this to the screen in the TV show in August. So the other 2 books that I read this month, I read on my kind of around when I was graduating. Things have been nuts, if you can't tell from how unhinged I am. Life's just been a lot lately. but I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is by Stuart Turton, and he also wrote The Devil in the Dark Water, which I have already read, and I loved that book. This one is also a mystery, and essentially this person wakes up and they are trapped in this kind of like game mystery time loop thing that they have to solve in order to be able to escape. And at the end of the night, Evelyn Hardcastle dies, and basically this person you wake up in the body of somebody else, and you get to live out like 7 full days out of all these different guests at this party. And at the end of it, you have to have solved it, otherwise the loop resets and you do it all again. So kind of like Groundhog Day in a little way. It's almost like Groundhog Day meets Clue, except like the vibes of it are a little different. I think it's supposed to take place after the First World War, kind of like 20s, I think is the vibe that I get, but I could be completely wrong on that. I'm not very good with things like that sometimes. It's really interesting. There's lots of like plot twists and turns, and you know, the way that they're able to work within the time loop and keep to the logic of it while also exploring the story is really interesting. And plus the fact that like he gets a full day as each person, so if he falls asleep halfway through one of the days, then like once he comes back to that day, he'll get to play out the rest of it, which is really cool. A different way of, you know, thinking about a time loop instead of like a hard reset every time you fall asleep. There was a little bit at the end with more of like the explanation of how you ended up in this situation and how you're gonna get out of it that like threw me off a little bit. I didn't know really how I felt about it, so I think that was the only thing where I was like, the mystery and everything is cool, but it felt like the landing didn't quite hit right for me, but obviously I won't get into that more because it's more of the twists and some of the other reveals, but I would highly recommend checking it out if you're looking for a mystery that's like different, you know? It's definitely refreshing and something new to read, because I find a lot of times, you know, mysteries can get a little cookie cutter, so it's definitely good if you're looking for something to mix it up a little bit. All right, other than that, the last one that I read was Nimona, and I was wondering, because it said it was like an adaptation of the web comic. I was like, well, is it an adaptation or is it just a print version? Like, I was curious. I haven't had a chance to go looking yet about whether or not it's different online, like if they cut stuff for the graphic novel version. I'm not sure, but this is by Noelle Stevenson, and Noelle Stevenson was the writer or showrunner. I think she was the showrunner on She-Ra, the animated Netflix version of it. And I've read her, she has like a graphic novel memoir type thing, which is really cool. Something about being on fire, but I can't quite remember exactly what it is. But this is kind of where she got her start, from what I understand. And so Nimona is a shapeshifter who kind of finds her way to Lord Ballister Blackheart, who is a villain with a vendetta, who is supposed to kind of take out the, you know, the good guy, Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin. And so there's kind of this idea of kind of playing on the tropes of like the villain and the hero, and which one of them is really the bad guy and which one's actually trying to do good. You know, Nimona's always pushing him like, hey, let's go kill people. And he's like, no killing, we don't do that. And she's like, you're a really boring villain. I think the one thing that I did find about it though was I wanted more of Lord Blackheart and Sir Goldenloin, because they knew each other beforehand and there's some sort of falling out and more that's going on there that I don't want to spoil to you all. But then, of course, as Sir Goldenloin starts to realize maybe the people that he's working for aren't as good as he thinks they are, and they end up finding their way back to each other, you know, there's some of those conversations about what went wrong, and I felt like their story was unfinished. You know, when I was talking about sticking the landing with the last one, that was also something that I found with this, was I was like, there was definitely another story to be told, whether told in like a spin-off just about them or covered a little bit more at the end, that I would have liked to see more exploration of. That's what I read this month. Thinking about it now, I only read one novel, which was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. That title also throws me off because it sounds too much like The 7 Wives of Evelyn Hugo. Really, really mixes me up. And then everything else I read this month was comics. Oh, I finished The Return of the King too. So I guess 2 novels, and then everything else was comics. Definitely been the vibe lately Also because that's what I have time for, because I am tired after work. I feel like most of my wrap-up for July is probably going to be Sandman. We'll see. We'll see. There might be some time for some more. I do have a couple other books at the library that I need to check out. I'm hoping to get the Dead Endia graphic novels at some point in time to read. That would be lovely. Mostly settling into my job so I have more time to do this stuff and read the books and make the videos, because I know I haven't had as much content lately. So I'm working on it. If you got videos, ideas, you got things you want to see, let me know. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you all being patient with me. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you get notifications, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I think that's everything I need to tell you to do. Yes, okay. We're gonna be quiet now before I go mad and take you all with me. My tea bag broke open and it looked like bugs. But it's not. It's just peppermint. Anyways, I appreciate you. I hope you're all having a wonderful summer and reading some great books. And until the next video, stay kind.